Title: HOA sent cops to evict me from my farm. Didn't know my wife's a Navy SEAL. I never thought the place I built with my bare hands would become a battleground. But that's exactly what happened the morning black SUVs rolled down my dusty driveway, and armed officers stepped out like they were raiding a cartel. The soft sunlight hit the rust-red barn behind me, and the wind carried the smell of fresh hay, the place my wife and I had built to be our forever home. I didn't know that by sunset our quiet farm would turn into a scene straight out of a war movie. It all began months earlier when the neighborhood HOA started breathing down our necks. My wife Emma and I had bought this farm as a sanctuary, 30 acres of peace away from the city noise. It wasn't part of any fancy gated community. But a nearby HOA decided to expand their jurisdiction, claiming our property fell within their community improvement district. They said we needed to follow their rules, paint our barn a certain color, pay their ridiculous maintenance fees, and even limit the number of animals we could have. I politely declined. This land was ours. I wasn't about to let anyone dictate what color I painted my fence or how many chickens I could raise. But the HOA didn't like no for an answer. They started sending letters. First polite, then threatening. Fines piled up for rules we never agreed to. Then they filed a lawsuit claiming we were violating community standards. We countered, and the battle dragged on. But they weren't done. The final straw came when I received a letter saying they'd obtained a court order to have us removed from our property for noncompliance. It wasn't real. It was a scare tactic. But that morning, they escalated. I was feeding the horses when I heard the crunch of tires. 5 black SUVs pulled up. Men in dark uniforms stepped out, along with a few HOA board members wearing smug smiles. The sheriff's deputy held a clipboard. "Mr. Walker," he said firmly, "we have an order to remove you from this property today." My stomach twisted. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. I tried to explain that this was private land, that the HOA had no real authority here. But they didn't care. And that's when my wife stepped out of the house. Emma had retired 2 years earlier. She never bragged about her past, but she'd served as a Navy SEAL. Quiet, strong, and fiercely protective, she was the kind of woman who didn't need to raise her voice to command a room. She walked out in her jeans and boots, her hair pulled back tight, her calm eyes scanning the scene like she was assessing a mission. "Morning," she said softly, but her tone carried weight. "Can someone explain why armed men are trespassing on my land?" The HOA president, a man named Richard, smirked. "This is no longer your land, Mrs. Walker. You failed to comply with our community standards. We're enforcing the order." Emma stepped closer. "You don't have jurisdiction here. This isn't part of your HOA. And that order is nothing but a piece of paper with your lawyer's letterhead." The deputy cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we're just following procedure." Emma's eyes locked on him. "Then you might want to check the property lines before you make the biggest mistake of your career." She pulled out a thick binder from the porch. Every deed, survey map, and legal document we had ever filed. She handed it to him, but not before pointing out the steel stakes that marked our property boundary. "Your authority ends a quarter mile from here. If you take one more step," she added in a low, steady voice, "you're trespassing." The deputy flipped through the papers, his face shifting from confidence to unease. But Richard wasn't backing down. "We have rights," he shouted. Emma tilted her head slightly, the way she used to when she was training new recruits. "Rights? You're on private farmland. You forged a legal notice. You brought armed men to intimidate a veteran and her husband. You've crossed every legal line in the book." Just then, Emma gave a signal. Subtle, almost unnoticeable. She had set up security cameras and sensors around the property months ago, knowing something like this could happen. The monitors inside lit up with live footage. I could see every SUV's license plate, every person who had stepped foot on our land. Emma turned to the deputy. "I suggest you call your superior and tell them they're about to be involved in an illegal eviction." It was like watching a chess game where my wife was 5 moves ahead of everyone else. Within minutes, 2 more patrol cars arrived, this time with a captain who immediately recognized the problem. After reviewing the documents, he ordered the officers to stand down. "You can't enforce an HOA claim on land that's not under their governance," the captain said, his voice firm. "This is over." Richard turned red. "This isn't over," he spat, shaking his finger at Emma. "Oh, it is," she replied. "And by the way, we've recorded everything, including your attempt to impersonate legal authority. That's a federal offense." The HOA board members scattered like leaves in the wind. One of them actually ran to his car. Emma calmly collected the papers from the captain and thanked him for handling it professionally. But my wife wasn't done. She filed a lawsuit the very next day. Trespassing, harassment, fraudulent legal documents. We took everything to court, and we won. The HOA not only lost their bogus claim, but also had to pay for all legal fees and damages. The judge was furious at their tactics. Weeks later, as we sat on our porch with mugs of coffee, watching the sun set over the golden fields, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. We'd been so close to losing everything. Emma reached over and took my hand. "You don't let bullies take your home," she said quietly, "whether it's on foreign soil or your own front yard." And that's the lesson that stuck with me. No matter how big or powerful someone claims to be, the truth and the law are on your side if you're willing to stand your ground. We didn't just protect our farm, we proved that no one, not even a self-important HOA, can take away what you've rightfully earned. So when the wind rustles through the old oak trees on our property, it doesn't sound like a warning anymore. It sounds like freedom, and it's the sweetest sound I've ever heard.